Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of the Free the Law podcast. I am, as always, your host, Attorney Brian Festa, Vice President and co-founder of We the Patriots USA. I'm very excited today to be coming to you with a very special guest, Father Frank Pavone, Director of Priests for Life. You can see them at priestforlife.org, I believe is the website. Let me just wanted to verify that. So priestforlife.org is the website. Wonderful organization. We're going to learn a lot about them. We're going to learn a lot about the pro-life work that Father Frank has been involved in for decades now. And then also what we can do now and some of the initiatives that they're working on now and that we're working on now here at We the Patriots USA, and how we can collaborate perhaps together on some of these initiatives. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Father Frank right into the studio. How are you?
Hello, Brian. I'm doing great, and it's a joy to be connected with you and with your audience.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to finally meet. I haven't met you in person. This is the first time I've actually connected with you. And I've heard about you for years. I've heard about your organization for years and wanted to collaborate. And I'm so glad that we finally made the connection. Why don't you begin by just telling our audience a little bit about yourself, your background, your history in this field, and a little bit about the organization, Priests for Life.
Well, I just celebrated my 37th anniversary of ordination. I was ordained on November 12th of 1988 in New York. I became a priest, but prior to becoming a priest, I had gotten very involved in the pro-life movement. I attended the third annual March for Life in DC. That was 1976. And from that time, it just struck me that abortion was such an important fundamental issue. It's like, how can we be killing babies? That doesn't make any moral sense at all. So I became more and more passionate about this issue. As I say, I exercised my initial ministry as a priest in New York City, but I got to the point, Brian, where I was like convinced in conscience that I needed to devote myself full time to working to end abortion and to protect these babies. So I got the necessary permissions to actually make this pro-life work my full-time ministry. Began with becoming the director of a ministry called Priests for Life that had already gotten started. This was the early 90s. And it got started because Cardinal O'Connor, who ordained me, also started a group called the Sisters of Life. Now, they're a flourishing religious community focused in on the same topic, ending abortion. But I thought right away, I said, there needs to be something like this for priests. So I got started with this. A priest out on the West Coast had the same idea, and he got something started out there. We came together, and then in 1993, I became the first full-time director of this ministry, began traveling nationwide, and we have become one of the largest national pro-life groups. We have a team of speakers that go into the churches. Our goal is to activate the churches, to really speak loud and clear for the unborn, to help people change public policy. And so therefore, we've gotten involved in a lot of election-related work and supporting pro-life candidates around the country. We have a whole broadcasting ministry, and we also oversee the largest ministry in the world for healing after abortion. So people are very wounded by abortion, not just the mother, but the father, the grandparents, the whole family. The abortionists themselves are wounded by this. They're wounded morally and psychologically. So we have a big ministry of healing for all these people. And then some of these people, once they find healing, want to speak up. And they want to share their story with others in the hope of preventing this pain and devastation in the lives of other people. So that's our campaign called Silent No More. So when you look at Priests for Life, it's a very diverse ministry. It's interdenominational, and it is focused on everything from the healing of those that have had abortions to the political engagement and educational work and broadcasting. And there's very few ministries that have such a wide range of diverse pro-life activities and such a long experience as we do in the movement here in America.
Well, that's just incredible. I'm so happy to hear that you're encompassing all the aspects of, the pro-life cause, the pro-life ministry, and so often I think that many of us in the pro-life movement lose sight of the fact that there are additional victims besides, of course, the the babies, which are
Right,
the principal victims who are sacrificed. Really,
right,
it's really demonic sacrifice is what abortion is. Um,
exactly.
but beyond those innocent victims, there are also other victims, the mothers sometimes who are pressured or coerced into doing this, who, if they had all the information and they really understood what they were doing, that this is a human life and not just a clump of cells, as they'll tell you on the other side, they wouldn't have done this. They wouldn't have done this. And we need to provide support. We need to pray for them. We need to love them. No matter what the sin is, we always approach the sinner, the person, the individual, the human, with compassion and the love of Christ, because that's what Christ did, right? He didn't just,
Always.
he called out sinners, but he still loved them. It's not like he just calls them out and casts them away and doesn't know. He came for the sinners, right? He didn't come to call the righteous, right?
You know,
He,
Brian, as I say it, we who reject abortion do not reject those who have had abortions, but rather we embrace them with the peace and mercy of Christ. And, this is one of the key ways that we get churches involved in this effort. A lot of times, priests and other pastors, they don't want to be political. And so we say, okay, we're not asking you to be political. Let's approach it from the point of view of, like St. Paul says in the scriptures, we are ministers of reconciliation. And pastors are trained that way. Priests, of course, in our Catholic faith, they know about administering the sacrament of reconciliation, and they have a heart for that. So when I give our clergy seminars, I say to them, look, there are people hurting in your congregation from a past abortion. Speak to them. A lot of them feel like, oh, I don't want to speak up about this because I'm going to hurt them. And I say, no. What's going to hurt them is the silence. If you speak and you lead with compassion, like when we train priests how to preach about this, I always say, you start off with saying, we are with you. If you feel you need to have an abortion, come to the church. We're going to help you find better alternatives. And secondly, if you have had one, please know we don't condemn you. Come to us. We want to bring you healing. And once people have heard those two parts of the message, then they're open to the rest of the message, where we talk about the rights of the unborn, the need to protect them both in life and in law. And I want to touch on something else that you so insightfully hit on here in your comment. Abortion continues only because of coercion. The so-called pro-choice movement is named for just the opposite of what they believe in. They don't believe in choice. They believe in coercion. And the reason why abortion advances through coercion and deception is because it's so contrary to human nature. I mean, it's contrary to every instinct we have to say that you can or should kill a baby. I mean, killing a baby is just, we're not made for that. We're made for just the opposite. And so in order to advance a whole industry based on abortion, you've got to not only fool people, you've got to force people. And we see this happening constantly. In fact, my friend Dr. David Reardon, he's one of the top researchers on abortion. He just came out with a study. He's been studying all this for decades, but he came out with one of his latest studies showing that some 60% of women who have abortions will say to you, I was forced. I didn't want to do it. This is contrary to my beliefs, my convictions, and my preferences. And that's not at all surprising. We see that in our healing work. We see that in the testimonies of Silent No More. And we see it, and I know this is of great interest to you, we see it in the medical profession, that those who are actually doing the abortions, very many of them have experienced coercion, and they didn't want to go through all the rigors of medical school only to end up being known as a baby killer. It's really, really sad, but in a sense, it makes a lot of sense that an industry that does this would have to advance itself by imposing this on other people.
so well said. And I've been, in my own small way, not on the world stage like you, but in my own small way, I've been involved in pro-life work for quite some time. I was in, back east in my former church. I was on the pro-life committee, and got involved in putting up billboards and pro-life events, and raising money for the local pregnancy center and things like that. But it's so important that everybody does their part, because there are so many people hurting, and we need to show that we're there not only to support mothers, pregnant women who support them through their pregnancies and after their pregnancies so that they won't have the abortion, but also people who have lived through and participated in the horrors of abortion, to let them know that there's a place for healing, there is recovery, and Silent No More. I love the name. Did you come up with that yourself? I love that.
My associate, Janet Morano, who's our executive director, she, together with Georgette Fournier of Anglicans for Life, came up with that.
All right. Well, the two of them, Janet and her collaborator, just absolutely, that's the best name you could have come up with. So kudos to you, because it's true. Silent No More, not only for the people that are survivors or people who are victims who have been coerced, but also those babies who obviously have no voice. We have to be the voice for them. And so they're going to be silent no more, because guess what? We're going to be the voices, not only in our activism, but also in court. I want to talk to you about that. Talk to me about some of the work that you've done, some of the legal work you've done, because I know you've been involved in legal work as well. And obviously that's a particular interest to me and to our organization here at We the Patriots USA. So can you just tell us a little bit about some of the legal work that Priests for Life has done?
Yes, absolutely. Well, we were petitioners all the way up to the Supreme Court under the Obama administration. It was not a fight that we chose. It was a fight that chose us when Obama, back in 2012, 2013, said to various, he said to practically every employer in America that you have to include some forms of abortion in the health insurance policies that you offer your employees. And we said, there's no way that we're going to do that, especially given that we're an organization dedicated to ending abortion. We're not going to start promoting it. So, but they said, you have to do this. And they, when we objected, they said, well, we're going to give you a year to, consider how you can accommodate to this mandate, which was coming through their Department of HHS. So we said, well, we don't need a year. We don't need a day. We don't need a minute. We will obey God rather than men. And so we filed a lawsuit immediately. We were one of the first groups to do so. And as time went on, other groups joined in. And these groups that joined in were one of the groups was the Little Sisters of the Poor. They got all the attention for this because of the absurdity of religious sisters being told that they had to pay for abortions. But we went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and so that was one of the key ways we were involved legally in fighting this coercion that I was referring to a moment ago. And a lot of times our members in our organization are facing coercion. Brian, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. A lot of times our members are facing coercion in their own professional lives. So we've had, for example, one of my friends in this movement is Coach Joe Kennedy. And so he won a big victory at the Supreme Court.
Kennedy versus Bremerton School District. Yes.
Yeah. He was told he couldn't pray
Great case.
on the ball field. He won that case. But, so many of our family, we call it our Priests for Life family, are in the medical profession. So we have medical students, for example, who were told that they had to accompany an abortionist through the procedure. They had to learn the procedure. And it's like, no, they did not want to have any part of that. In one case in Vermont, we had, let me back up. The President Trump's first administration, he established a special office, under the Office of Civil Rights, a special division for specifically conscience and religious freedom. So there was this nurse in in Vermont, who had said, I don't want to be involved in abortion, and yet they forced her anyway. Now that already violates the law. President Trump's administration actually intervened because she was able to, through this special office the president created, make her complaint known. I'm being asked as an American citizen to violate my conscience under the law. And they told that Vermont Medical Institution, you can't do this. Otherwise, you either you reform or you're going to lose your federal funding. That's the kind of backing we need from the government, and specifically from the executive branch, is supposed to be enforcing the law. But we've got a problem in America regarding lack of respect for conscience, and the lack of respect for conscience is coming from one direction, from the radical left, the radical pro-abortion left, who ironically cloak their activities under the slogan of choice and freedom. It's anything but that.
Yeah, and we are a nonpartisan organization, but there's nothing wrong with calling out the truth. It does happen in this case, on this issue. It happens that almost universally, it's people on the left, it's Democrats that are fighting for what they call abortion rights, reproductive rights, they call it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest misnomer. I think, along with being pro-choice, that's the other one, is saying reproductive rights, because how are these your reproductive rights? You're actually trying to stop reproduction.
That's right.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I'd go a step further, and I don't call them pro-choice. I call them pro-abort or pro-death. Yeah. People don't like that. They say that's too controversial. You're being too extreme. Well, no, I'm who I am is I call things as I see them. Okay. And that's what they're fighting for. They're fighting for the right to kill. They're fighting for death. That's what this right is. It's not the right to reproduce. It's the right to kill.
Well, Brian, along those lines, and I think you'll find this very, very interesting as an attorney, in various states now, constitutional amendments have been passed that declare a fundamental right to abortion, fundamental right to reproductive freedom. They're all worded a little bit differently, but they're going all to the same goal. That goal being to stop the legislative process from further restricting or prohibiting abortion, because they're afraid that the people are going to be more and more successful in doing that. And we have been successful as a movement in passing laws that protect the unborn. So to stop that in its tracks, they say, well, let's put in the state constitution, because we no longer have an assertion that it's in the federal constitution, thanks to the fact that Roe v. Wade is out the door. So let's put it in the state constitution. Okay. But you know what? I've been saying in those places where they have these amendments, it says, oh, reproductive freedom means, you can make any decisions at all, relating to your pregnancy. Well, hold on a second. Then that means, therefore, not only the right to end the pregnancy, that means the right to continue it. And This goes back to what we were saying a moment ago about the coerced abortions. If people are being pressured, maybe by parents, by the boyfriend, by friends, by others, by their doctor, by the abortionist, if people are being pressured into doing that, well, then this is a violation of their constitutional rights as well. And we can make, I think, those provisions about reproductive freedom, make that boomerang back on the other side by saying, well, then stop pushing her towards the door of the abortion clinic.
Right. And they'll deny that they do that, but we know they do it. You've seen the undercover videos from Planned Parenthood. Actually, it doesn't even have to be undercover. Right. Here we are out on the streets, out on the sidewalk in front of the abortion clinic, trying to give information to women going in, whether it be pamphlets, trying to talk to them. And you'll see workers will come out and start shouting at you, what are you doing? Not allowing us even to have conversations sometimes in public. And then, we see what goes on inside, and they don't want to show the mother the ultrasound, right? The ultrasounds are so powerful because, especially now we have 3D ultrasounds and everything. You can see this baby. You see it sucking its thumb. You can see it moving around. You can see the features on its face. Okay, now with the technology that we have, you can hear the heartbeat, of course. All the things that we do at pregnancy, or not we, but that are done at pregnancy centers to try to support these women so that they know that there is a living being within them. And I want to just touch on that from a legal perspective. I just want to share something with you. When I was in law school, I was in constitutional law, and I'll never forget this one night in class where we were talking about legal persons and how corporations have been recognized by the Supreme Court of the United States as legal persons, which entitles them to all the rights and privileges available to persons under the United States Constitution. So a corporation has due process rights, for instance. Okay,
Right.
those apply to, you can't deprive a corporation of property, of liberty, of life of the corporation, all right, without due process of law, for instance. But yet, unborn babies, I don't call them a fetus or a clump or cells or anything, babies, we know who are living. We can, even when we can detect the heartbeat, they still deny that that's a person. And so I raised my hand, rabble rouser that I am. And this is in Connecticut, the law school where I was in Connecticut. Of course, you know, I'm in a room full of the majority very pro-abort, you know, leftist. And I say, well, wait a second, professor, you just said that corporations are regarded as persons under the law. Why are not unborn babies then regarded as persons under the law? And I'll never forget the woman sitting behind me. She goes, "Oh, give me a break. Like, are you for real?" I said, "Yeah, I am for real."
Yeah.
And honestly, I put him on the spot and he couldn't answer. He said, "Well, you know, that is a question that's been raised." And you know, he didn't really have an answer for it. And this
Yeah.
is a professor that, although he leaned left, as I could kind of tell, he was more moderate. He would certainly be considered moderate by today's standards on the left. And he was actually reasonable. So I respected him because I could have debates and conversations with him without being
Yes.
shouted down. And he might not
Yeah.
always agree with me, but he would listen to me and talk to me. And so he was reasonable about it. He didn't make me look or feel foolish, but he couldn't answer it. To his, you know, I mean, just again, to his credit, he didn't push back and deny that that was a legitimate argument, even though the person behind me and others in the class were sighing and sort of, you know, giving a reaction. But personhood is so important. I heard Mike Huckabee talk about it years ago, like a decade ago at least, saying we really need to focus in the pro-life movement on the personhood movement, because once an unborn baby is considered a person, then it's entitled to all the protections, which means you cannot kill it. You cannot deprive it of life.
Right.
Him or her, I won't say it, him or her of life without due process of law, which means, of course, it would have, the only time the government's allowed to kill someone would be obviously for the death penalty, for a criminal conviction. So a baby could never be killed then, because obviously a baby could never be convicted of that. So an unborn baby would be always protected and everywhere, and abortion would be illegal in all 50 states. And, you know, this is what needs to be happened. The only remaining question is, when does it become a person? And in Roe v. Wade, if you listen to the oral arguments and you look at the decision, they had difficulty defining that, and they just steered clear from that, as I recall reading through it, because they were like, you know, it's too risky. You know, we can't say, you know, we're not obviously scientists, doctors, we can't say exactly when that life begins. So they didn't ever define when life begins. But I would say, if I were a justice of the Supreme Court, which I never will be, but if I were, just in my fantasy world, I would say, let's err on the side of caution and just say it begins at conception. As soon as a pregnancy is detected, as soon as we know a pregnancy has occurred, there is a human life there. If we're going to say we're not doctors and scientists, then wouldn't the rational and prudent thing to do be to err on the side of caution and say it begins at conception? Yes. So therefore, life would be protected from conception to natural death, which is how it should be in this country.
Well, you know, Brian, what you're bringing up is a principle in Christian ethics called the principle of the practical doubt. And the analogy is perfect. And I often point this out about what was the biggest mistake of Roe v. Wade. The biggest mistake of Roe was to say, we're not sure when human life begins, but you can kill it anyway. It's so, because it's like you're going hunting and something's moving behind the bush and you don't know if it's a bear or a man. You don't shoot and ask questions later. You find out first. If you're going to demolish a building, you don't do so unless you're sure it's empty. If you think there might be children playing inside, you may not know for sure, but you better find out before you bring that building down with dynamite. So we are in a situation where, you know, that's a very powerful argument. And, you know, Roe was, and now, of course, what the court is saying is, okay, listen, apply the scientific knowledge, have the debates, have the philosophical arguments, and work it out through the political process to get to the right position on an abortion policy. Who are we, 9 justices of the court, to decide this matter for 330 million Americans? The Dobbs decision was in a sense, an act of humility on the part of the court and common sense to say, let the people work this out. And I use this analogy too, pertinent to what you're saying. We got to get to the point where we protect these babies as persons. Under Roe, it was like we were in reverse. If you think of the gears of a car, we were in reverse. The court was saying you cannot protect the unborn. Dobbs put us into neutral. The court says you may protect the unborn. Now we've got to get into drive, where the court says you must protect the unborn. Why? Because they're like us. We wouldn't want our lives protected just up to just after a certain age, or protected in one state but not in another. It's personhood. It's life. And there's a growing movement within the pro-life movement to say that the right to life is in fact in the Constitution for the very reasons you mentioned, 5th and 14th Amendment. You can't deprive people of life. You can't. Their due process of law, that's one thing, but otherwise the presumption is life is protected.
Absolutely. And I love that analogy of the different gears of the car and driving, because that's so true. Before I discuss, because I'm going to conclude with that, I wanted to talk about everything that you've been doing and your organization before I mentioned what we're doing at the end. So before I get to what we're doing, I do want to just ask you, is there any current, or are there any current initiatives that you're working on now that you'd like people to know about at Priests for Life?
Yes, I mentioned earlier that activating the churches is one of the key things we do. So we have a website called prolife.church, and we have in 2026 a brand new church pro-life kit and training initiative that people can buy into. So Brian, if people want to be sort of a liaison, many churches, as you said, you belonged to the pro-life committee back in your church. We have this new training material, bringing people right up to the minute on developments in the pro-life movement and what we need to do, in the year 2026 to bring an end to abortion. So I want to invite people to go there, prolife.church. They can have trainings online. They can have trainings in person. They can get materials for their church. The priests and the pastors will have material on how to preach on abortion from the scriptures. How do we get people politically involved? All the dimensions, the healing, that like I said, the whole wide range of work that we do. We want to activate those churches better than ever before. So that is one of the things I'd point out in terms of how we can help people coming into the new year.
That's great. And I put that up on the screen so people can see that website, prolife.church. And I'll also put it in the description when this is aired. So, I want to talk about the latest initiative that we've unveiled here at We the Patriots USA. I told you about it, obviously, before our interview, but for anyone who's listening, watching, that may not be aware of it, we just recently launched an initiative here at We the Patriots USA to defend any healthcare worker who has been disciplined or terminated from their employment for refusing to participate in any way in an abortion on religious grounds. And you mentioned something earlier, which I think is important to note as well, is coercion of healthcare practitioners as well, because sometimes they may not even realize that what they're being asked to do is for an abortion. Okay, go ahead. Let's say you're a CNA or something. Go ahead and clean or you're someone who, a medical assistant of some sort, clean these instruments. You're asked to clean these instruments, this equipment, but you're not told what it's going to be used for. You have just participated, even though unknowingly. Now, I'm not saying that's a sin. I'm not a priest. I'm not going to tell, but you have to know that you're committing a sin for it to be a sin. You can't unwittingly do something and you didn't even know what you were doing. So I'm not talking about we're not going to get into the moral culpability, but what I mean is after the fact, you realize it. You could have a claim if you have placed your employer on notice that you have a religious objection to abortion and to participating in it. If you've then been told to do something and you were coerced into being complicit or in any way aiding and abetting this act of abortion, you could bring a claim. More commonly, what would happen is someone would be asked directly to do something that they know is participating in some way with the procedure or assisting with the procedure. And then they say, well, I can't do that. I have a religious objection as a Catholic, or if they're evangelical, Protestant, whatever it is, they will state, listen, this is my belief. I have a religious objection. I can't do this. I need an accommodation. They may not say it in those words. I'm using more legal words from Title VII, but I need a religious accommodation. You don't have to use magic words. You can just say, I don't do that. I don't want to do that. It's against my religion. And then they have a duty and obligation at that point. That's triggered the interactive process to work with you and say, okay, well, let's see if we can provide you an accommodation. Now, with abortion, for those of us who are pro-life and disagree with it, like myself, there's no compromise. It's not like, oh, well, maybe you can do this and sort of help with it, but not be in the room. No. It's either you're going to exempt me entirely from the process, from the preparation all the way up until the aftermath, or you're not. And if you're not, then, I guess you're going to have to do what you do, but I'm not doing it. Is there anyone out there that you know of? Or I'll ask my audience also, not just you, Father Frank, but anyone listening. Is there anyone listening or watching that knows anyone in this situation who is a healthcare practitioner, whether it's a medical assistant, a CNA, a nurse, a doctor, of course, a PA, an advanced practice nurse, or we call it also a nurse practitioner? Anyone out there who has ever been asked fairly recently, I can't go back, decades or something because this is statute of limitations, but fairly recently, within the last year, 2 years, has been asked to participate in any way in an abortion, please contact us. We want to defend you, and we provide pro bono legal representation. That means completely free of charge. So if you become a client of ours, we take your case, you'll never pay a penny in legal expenses or anything else. We bear the full burden of the cost because of the generosity of our donors. That's the only way we're able to do that. And obviously, you can make a contribution at wethepatriotsusa.org. I'm also going to plug your organization if anyone wants, because we want to collaborate with Priests for Life. That's one of the main reasons that I have you on, is we want to collaborate, and we want to also potentially provide you with legal representation if you ever need it, or if you'd ever like to be a plaintiff and join us in one of our lawsuits. Please also contribute to their cause. How do people do that? What's the website?
prolifegift.org is our contribution site, prolifegift.org. And we are eager to collaborate on this. We hear from people all the time who are facing these kinds of pressures in their professional lives, including as medical students and as physicians. And there are a number of organizations over the years that have developed precisely because pressures like this exist. I think, for example, of our friends over at the National Association of Pro-Life Nurses. And that group has as one of its purposes to make sure that nurses know their legal rights and that they find the kind of help they need, exactly like what you're providing. So we will definitely continue, as we continue to put the word out among our network about what you just said, to channel people to the kind of legal services that you're offering. It's such a need. And I think that this need is going to be more and more felt precisely because as we keep winning on the pro-life front, and we are winning, the other side in their desperation are going to become even more coercive. One of the big problems over the decades that the abortion industry has faced has been turnover of personnel because we weren't made to kill babies. I think of the pregnancy centers, you don't get tired of saving lives, but you do get tired of taking lives. And there are national and international groups of former abortion workers. You don't see any national or international groups of former pregnancy center counselors or directors, because you don't get tired of saving lives. You get tired of taking lives because we weren't made to do that. The only way, as we were saying before, that this advances, that abortion advances, is through coercion. And that's why we're eager to work with you, as you just described.
Well, that's great. And I put also our website up on the screen as well, so you can support this litigation, because if you make a gift, by the way, gifts are tax deductible within the guidelines of U.S. tax law. So as we near the end of the year, you're thinking about your charitable giving and tax deductions, you can give to us at wethepatriotsusa.org/donate, prolifegift.org to donate to the Ministries of Priests for Life. And I just strongly encourage everybody to do that because, again, we're nonprofits. Both of our organizations, we subsist solely on the backs of donations, the generosity of our supporters. I know things are very difficult with people's finances right now in the economy. People are having trouble even just putting food on the table. So I get that. But even if you can only give $5, if 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people gave $5 to each of our organizations, it'd be a pretty good gift.
Right.
So we have to look at it that way. This is a group effort, a collaborative effort, and yes, we do want to work with you. So yes, Father Frank, if you know anyone that is in that situation, or if anyone writes to you, please do send them to us. We are actively looking for, and please do share this interview. I'm going to give you the link when it's posted, but please do share this interview on your platforms and with your network as well, if you can, on your email list, because we want everyone possible who hears this to know that we are standing ready to defend life and to defend those who defend life and stand firm in their religious convictions, stand firm in their faith. We have a slogan, our company slogan here at We the Patriots USA is, when you stand up to tyrants, we stand up for you. And so that's what we're all about, because you take the first step, all of you listening, to stand up for life. But then when they come for you, we're going to have your back and stand up for you. And that's why we exist. So I'm just so grateful and blessed that we had the opportunity to connect and have this conversation today. Is there anything you want to say, more parting words, or anything else you wanted to add before we conclude?
Well, we are people of faith. And when I talk to pro-life activists engaged in whether it's the legal battles or any of the other kind of battles with this movement, I always tell them, we are not just working for victory. We are working from victory. Victory is our starting point. Why? Because Jesus Christ has conquered death. He is risen. He is alive. He is among us. He speaks through us. He works through us. He unites us, and he's going to lead us to the final unfolding of that victory that he has already won. So abortion has been conquered at its root. We have a very real battle. Very real lives are still at stake. But brothers and sisters, we conduct this battle with absolute and full confidence. I want to encourage everybody to have that joyful confidence, because that will keep our souls at peace, even when we deal with such disturbing issues. Brian, thank you for dealing with it the way that you do, and I look forward to working together.
Amen. So well said, Father. And I just want to say also, I forgot to mention, if anyone wants to contact us, if you are a potential client and you're in that situation and you want legal assistance, info@wethepatriotsusa.org is our email, or you can reach us, of course, on social media, at WT Patriots USA on X, or We the Patriots USA on Facebook, and other places on social media. How can people contact you if they do either about this legal initiative that I mentioned, or any other help or assistance that they need? You have an email address you want to give out, the website, of course, again?
Yes, mail@priestsforlife.org, mail@priestsforlife.org. Priestsforlife.org is our main website. And then on social media, I am at FR Frank Pavone on all the major platforms, FR Frank Pavone. Looking forward to connect with you.
Yes, and I will make sure to try to remember to tag you in all of our posts on social media, so that I can share your things, you can share us, we can follow each other. And this is how we grow this movement, making these connections, right? It starts right here with conversations, with ideas, and then we make those connections and develop those relationships. So thank you once again, Father, so much for your time. I really, really appreciate you taking time out to join us and have this conversation. And we will definitely have you back on again in the future.
Please, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, and God bless you.
God bless you.